The time is 6:10. This morning, a special treat for Today in St. Louis viewers, a behind-the-scenes look at how this show is put together. Let's go to Art Holliday.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. You know, as St. Louis's only 90-minute newscast, Today in St. Louis is unique. What you see and hear on your television every morning doesn't really give a sense of how many people and how much effort it takes to do Today in St. Louis, or TISL as we refer to it in the newsroom. This morning we're going to give you an inside look at Today in St. Louis and introduce you to some of the dedicated professionals who bring it to you.
I'm gonna wait till the midnight hour when there's no one else around.
The midnight hour is when preparation for Today in St. Louis begins. That's when producer Jim Swantner arrives in the newsroom.
When I first arrive, there's generally nobody here except usually the person that's doing the overnight cut-ins. This is a very quiet newsroom, which actually I kind of like.
Jim produces the first and last half hour of the 90-minute newscast. He begins the decision-making process that determines which stories you'll see and hear some 5.5 hours later. So, while most of the city sleeps, the activity level in the KSDK newsroom slowly begins to accelerate. At 2:30, producer Stacy Gerson arrives. She is in charge of the 6 to 6:30 segment of Today in St. Louis.
Because I'm thinking about a local story, I really am. So that way you could probably lead with Tyson.
By 3 o'clock, producers Nancy Adams and Bill Baltz are on the job, writing news stories and choosing video to go with those stories.
Good morning.
Good morning, Scott.
Meteorologist Scott Connell is usually the first on-camera person to arrive. He immediately begins preparing his forecast because on most days he leaves the station to go on location.
Well, it's a marvelous night for a moon dance with the stars up above in your eyes.
Outside, headlights signal more early morning arrivals, including anchor Jennifer Blome.
I honestly think I was cut out for morning TV. I'm a morning person. I know you think I'm in heavy denial, but I do not mind the hours. I like driving to work when the city sleeps. I think there's something romantic about it, and I like doing the show. I had a couple weeks off recently where I stayed in town, so I watched the morning show every day, and I got sort of the viewer perspective, and I like the intimacy of the morning show. You know, people are running around getting ready for work and stuff when we're on the air, and I really feel like it's much more personal than a nighttime newscast where you sit there and just read news.
For obvious reasons, coffee is the drink of choice for many on the early morning crew.
Oh, it's early.
After a cup of coffee and a bite of grapefruit, the newsroom hits warp speed.
Yes?
Watch this. I'm D-fast.
Between 40 and 50 videotapes have to be edited for a typical 90-minute newscast. So editors Mark Mosier, Terry Kruger, and John King are kept busy all morning. Jennifer Blome is assigned several stories to write, while I edit videotape highlights for the morning's sports stories. Executive producer Ava Ehrlich reads each piece of wire copy, about 90 pages for the entire show.
My paramount job from the second I walk in the door is to make sure we have everything that's right for the air that day, and that it is all correct, and that it makes sense for you and Jennifer.
It's less than 30 minutes before airtime. Time for some last-minute hair maintenance. Down the road in Clayton, engineers Frank Scalise and Dick Deacon set up for Scott Connell's live remote from a bakery. Minutes away from the newscast, Jennifer and I get a quick look at scripts for the first half hour. We won't see the other 60 pages until we're actually on the air.
3 tapes for headlines, camera 2 at 2 shots.
Next on News Channel 5, fire forces dozens of elderly...
Finally, it's showtime. And once Today in St. Louis is on the air, there's still plenty of behind-the-scene activity, and that's where we'll continue tomorrow morning.
Oh, you make it look like so much fun, Art.
Well, of course it's fun. I mean, we've got Danish and pastries here to eat, and we just laugh and have a great time.
What more could you ask for?
That's right.
I look forward to seeing tomorrow's.